Let's talk more about this now with Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. He is a member of the Intelligence Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. What do you think of this, the comments that the president made about Robert Mueller? He didn't say that he says really that there would be a red line, which is to have Mueller investigating finances of his family. He feels like that is outside of what he's supposed to be doing, and he didn't rule out firing him.
I think first that it's inappropriate for the president to try to dictate the boundaries of the investigation. And I'm glad to see that Robert Mueller is taking the investigation wherever it leads. If, as Jeffrey mentioned, I think if he does attempt to fire Bob Mueller, that you're going to see a strong bipartisan backlash in Congress for any move like that.
You're confident of that? I mean, what would Congress do, and what do you have confidence in your Republican colleagues? How far does that confidence go that they would actually do something?
Well, to be honest, that confidence has been shaken over the last few months based on some of the things we've seen happen already and the lack of concern or action that's been taken by my Republican colleagues. But I do think that if you had a repeat of the Saturday Night Massacre, for example, that Congress would be compelled to take action. Again,
what kind of action do you think?
Well, I think you would probably, I would think you would have calls for impeachment on the Republican side if that happened. It would be unprecedented in American history for a president to be successful in removing that special counsel and in dictating the terms of an investigation into possibly him and his family and his associates. And what I heard from him yesterday when he talked about how upset he was at Jeff Sessions, what I heard was a president who was trying to get a loyalist, essentially a yes man, his good friend who endorsed him first in the Senate, in there as special counsel, and it sounds like to protect him from a true Russia investigation, which is deeply disturbing for the country.
Let's listen to part of what was really an extraordinary interview that the president had.
Mueller was looking at your finances, your family's finances, unrelated to Russia. Is that a red line?
Would that be a breach of what his actual?
I would say yes. Yeah, I would say yes. By the way, I would say I mean, it's possible that it's condo or something. So, I sell a lot of condo units, and somebody from Russia buys a condo. Who knows? I don't make money from Russia. In fact, I put out a letter saying that I don't make from one of the most highly respected law firms and accounting firms. I don't have buildings in Russia. They said I own buildings in Russia. I don't. They said I made money from Russia. No, it's not my thing. I don't do that.
He was asked there about finances unrelated to Russia. The president brought it back to Russia. If there was some sort of what maybe Democrats would have called during the special counsel for the Clinton submission creep, do you think that's fair?
Well, to the extent that this is tied to the special counsel's investigation, then yes, I think that it is fair. And the president laid out his position there that he has no investments or nefarious deals with Russia, but there's certainly been news reports which really raise doubt about that statement and really bring it into question.
So you think that in Mueller's purview should be finances to see if there are connections to Russia, or if he sees something amiss that has nothing to do with Russia, should he pursue that?
I think he's got a broad purview, as historically special counsels have. And honestly, Brianna, if you're an ordinary American citizen or even another politician, once the FBI, or in this case a special counsel, starts opening your books, starts opening the files, and they find something that's illegal, they're not just going to let it go. And so I suspect that's what's going on, or could be going on here.
Is your committee going to look at President Trump's finances, do you think?
Our committee's investigation is broad. Without going into anything classified, I'll say that our investigation and the questions that we're asking are quite broad.
All right. So not a yes, not a no. But do you see in a way finances being related to this issue of Russia?
Absolutely. I think it's quite possible that financing is related. It may be that there was nothing illegal done at all, that the president is in the clear, as he says, but I also think that it's probably fair to investigate those things.
You, I know, probably have strong opinions about the president's previously undisclosed meeting with Vladimir Putin at a dinner at the G20, and you are on the Foreign Affairs Committee. So the president tells the Times that he and President Putin only discussed adoptions. But adoptions, of course, are very closely linked to U.S. sanctions against Russia because Russia halted the adoption of Russian orphans by U.S. families to retaliate for those sanctions. So what concerns does that raise for you?
Well, if you look at that day, July 7th, there had already been a formal 2-hour meeting, which went way over schedule. So this is a second hour-long meeting. What's extraordinary about it is, first of all, the length of the meeting, but also that there was no other American present. So we don't know if there was anything offered by either president, if there was any deal struck, whether it was on foreign policy or anything else. So that's very troubling, and that cannot be the accepted new normal for how a president interacts with foreign leaders, whether it's President Trump or the next president after this.
How do you distinguish this? I guess maybe how do you characterize this differently than, say, President Obama having a 15-minute pull-aside meeting with Vladimir Putin, and then well down the line, we find out that they had figured out an off-ramp for the chemical weapons situation in Syria sometime after that discussion?
A few things. First, President Obama, as far as I know, didn't disinvite or not have any other American around, including even a translator, when he was speaking with Vladimir Putin. So there was somebody else and some record of what was discussed. But let's be honest again. President Obama didn't have this cloud hanging over him about the Russians, and specifically Vladimir Putin ordering Russian operatives to help him win a presidential election, and Donald Trump does.
All right, stick around, because as you know, there's a lot of testimony on Capitol Hill next week that is going to